Flu-like illnesses are rising, and now comes news there's a shortage of a popular treatment.
Our 6 News' Johan Marin talked to pharmacists about this shortage.
If you're suffering from the flu, relief may be harder to find this season. Pharmacies in the metro and nationwide are dealing with a shortage of Tamiflu.
We do get a lot of calls from patients that have already called, 10, 15 other pharmacies saying that all of them are out of stock.
The antiviral drug helps reduce the severity of the illness, shortening your symptoms by a day or two. Andrew Sliceman is a pharmacist at Kohl's RX here in Omaha. He says it's been a while since they've received Tamiflu shipments.
Every shortage is because of a supply-demand imbalance, and right now it's because of the demand with the increased infections of the flu, strep, RSV, COVID.
A year ago, Sliceman and other pharmacists had Tamiflu in stock. This year, with the rising infections, they have to tell their customers they have to wait a couple days.
The cases are higher as people are wearing masks less, they're going in public more often. A lot of the kids that did not get infected in the last couple of years because of social distancing and wearing masks, now they're all getting infected at the same time.
It is unclear how long the shortage will last, but Andrew advises those who need Tamiflu to contact the local pharmacy to see if it's in stock or see if they can switch to an alternative medication. On your side in Omaha, Johan Marin, 6 News.
Kohl's Pharmacy expects to receive Tamiflu shipments at the end of the day today.